marks a journey that brings together, like I mentioned, parliamentarians, academics, researchers, and civil society actors to collectively explore and shape the future of legislation, governance, and sustainable development in Africa, as our conference theme states. Parliaments in Africa, opportunities and prospects for sustainable development. John mentioned that this journey began 3 years ago. And when you mentioned 3 years ago, it sounds like a very long time. And it finally culminated into what we have today. Yesterday, it was a roller coaster, a lot of flying and moving parts here and there. But I thought I could share just a little bit of what brought us here and to this moment, and what it explains or what describes the kind of people that we have in this room. And part of it comes from my reflections as a young scholar. And during that time, we used to come across academic articles while writing my dissertation. And some of these articles tend to be quite complex in nature. You start reading one, get to the middle, and ask yourself, what was it saying in the beginning? And you just can't remember. Then you go back again to the beginning and come back right to the middle, and you still can't remember what it was saying. And go back again and until you say, okay, first abandon the article, take a break. I mean, those who are familiar with the journey is like usually when you're trying to write and the writing process, sometimes you just take breaks and go and have mindless conversation to try and refresh your mind. And then later on you come back and you're like, okay, now I have to read this article and try to understand what it says. And you read about 7,000 words and you end up summarizing it in just 2 sentences. And guess how much time you spent doing that? About 3 hours, just trying to understand that. But on the other hand, sometimes you also come across informal pieces in blogs, newspapers, and some of them actually help you break down some of this complex theoretical information. And then you ask yourself, okay, but then why couldn't we write this way? How comes this thing is not explained as easily as it is? And for the academics, what they normally talk about is peer review. It's something that you write for your own selves, and you critique yourselves and bash yourselves, and it doesn't come to the outside world. And so we thought that it's very important. The academics do great research. The practitioners also do great work. But then how do we meet? What brings us together? And this is actually what AFRIPAL is about. AFRIPAL is the first platform that brings together, that bridges the practice and academia in parliament and legislation on the continent. And we thought that this would be one of the very best placed opportunities for us to talk and to deliberate on how we can together inclusively lead to inclusive legislation, and how we can develop legislation and make sure that it contributes to sustainable development, but it's also relevant to all stakeholders. AFRIPAL intends to, in very few objectives, intends to promote the exchange of best practices and innovations in legislation across Africa. And you will see that on our logo, it reads Africa Regional Convening on Parliament and Legislation, and the Africa Regional Conferences on Parliament and Legislation is what we aim to do. And it's one of the ways and the avenues in which we hope to promote best practices and innovations in Parliament and legislation. This is the inaugural conference. It is not the last. Many other AFRIPAL conferences are happening, and they will be happening every 2 years across Africa. So at this point, we would like to extend this invitation to you to the next AFRIPAL in 2027. All the Ugandan partners are happy to host you again in Kampala. But if you want us to come to your jurisdiction, we're also happy to do that. So please let us know, and we'll be visiting you where you are. And we believe that as we move around the continent and have these conversations around the continent, we bring this space closer to the people that we are actually trying to ensure that they are included in these conversations, because some of these things sometimes they tend to be elitist in nature. But if we come to the specific jurisdictions, it helps create that avenue and the atmosphere for sharing of experiences. AFRIPAL also aims to enhance the capacity of legislatures, parliamentary staff, academics, and civil society organizations or actors. We also will disseminate research and provide strategic leadership. And this is through the journals, the African Journal of Parliamentary Affairs, the African Parliamentary Democracy Series, and then the AFRIPAL blog, which is already launched. The blog is on the house. So the blog basically aims to showcase the new developments in parliaments and legislation across the continent, but then also globally. So we hope that you could be part of this opportunity. The blog is already launched. We already have best practices that have been shared from the Parliament of Zambia, from Kenya, and we invite you to use this opportunity, this space, to basically share what you are doing in your jurisdictions, and hopefully others can be able to learn from them. And then, of course, we'll establish a community of practice among parliamentarians, scholars, and institutions, and that is the African Association of Legislation, which we shall be launching later today. And we'd also want to extend this invitation to you to be part of its members. So be part of the community of practice that will drive these conversations. Again, AFRIPAL as it is today and what you see today is not something that was dreamt up in one person's mind. It's something that came out of a collaborative process, both between academics and practitioners, and we want to continue this tradition as we move forward. So, just a little bit about the program. We have a program already in our books, but the program has already been updated. There are just a few updates that you can be able to see on the website. So please take a look at the website if you need any for update information on the program. They're not that different, but you can be able to make a few notes here and there. So I'd like to welcome you to AFRIPAL, and thank you for taking the time and spending the money to come here and be part of this conversation. We don't take it lightly. But without further ado, I don't want to take much of your time. I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Mauro Zamboni. Mauro Zamboni is currently serving as a professor at the Faculty of Law, Stockholm University, and he's been there since 2011. He also holds positions of as a senior research associate fellow at the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, University of London, and he's held this position since 2015, and also at the Korea Legislation Research Institute Global Research